My name is Penny Cowan. I'm with the American Chronic Pain Association. Actually, the American Chronic Pain Association has been around for 30 years now. And our focus is to provide peer support and teach coping skills to people with pain. And we had this wonderful opportunity to come out and talk to you about fibromyalgia. And it is a sponsorship with the support of Pfizer. So we want to thank them for allowing us to do this, provide the lunch, and make these talks available. What we're going to be talking about today is fibromyalgia. What I'd like to do first is talk a little bit about chronic pain. What is chronic pain? And it's a pain that continues a month or more past the usual healing period, and it usually lasts from 3 to 6 months. If pain goes on that long, it's chronic pain. The point I want to make here is that it's not always the same consistent level, and I think that's where chronic pain becomes so very confusing. You're not always at the same exact level of pain. It goes up and it goes down. You have good days and you have bad days, and so people get the wrong impression thinking you look good today. You know, why are you not being able to do something that you could do yesterday? So it's never that consistent level. Let's talk about fibromyalgia and who gets fibromyalgia. More than 5 million people are dealing with fibromyalgia in America today. About 80 to 90% of them are women. But that doesn't mean that men don't get fibromyalgia. You can get it at any age, but usually it's between the ages of 20 and 50 when you first begin to see the symptoms of it. I think one of the most problematic things is that it can take up to 3 years, and I know from myself, and I'm actually a person that also has fibromyalgia. I've had it for 36 years now, and that's why we're doing all of this. But it can take 3 to 5 years to get a diagnosis, and I think that's what is one of the most difficult things about having fibromyalgia, is just getting that answer. It is the most common widespread muscle pain condition in the United States. So how do you diagnose fibromyalgia? And if you look at the chart up there, you can see there's little red dots. Those are called trigger points. And if you have 11 of the 18 trigger points, then there's a good chance that you have fibromyalgia. You have to have that pain for more than 3 months, which falls into the category of chronic pain. The symptoms include aching, radiating, shooting, burning, exhausting, nagging pain. It's a little murky. It's a little unclear exactly what it is. And I think, again, that lends to how confusing it is to treat fibromyalgia. So you may experience achy muscles that feel tender to the touch. And I know for me, probably a few years into it, it hurt to wear clothes. I was wearing my husband's clothes. The looser, the better, because it just hurt to even touch my skin sometimes. It was that bad. Morning stiffness. You wake up and it's like, you feel just as bad as you did before you went to bed the night before. So you're very stiff. And it's sort of, I always sort of looked at myself like the Tin Man, and I needed that oil in the morning. The Wizard of Oz, the Tin Man, and he had those really creaky joints. That's what I felt like a lot, especially in this kind of weather. Dull aching pain or deep intense pain, or just flu-like symptoms. You may experience widespread pain all over your body. Have trouble with memory. It's called fibrofog, concentration, being able to keep focused on things all the time. That is another symptom. Poor sleep, fatigue when you wake up. You go to bed, you sleep, you can sleep many hours, and you still don't feel rested in the morning. And that's a real problem. Some of the myths about fibromyalgia, that it isn't a real medical condition. It is. It is. I want you all to know it is definitely a real medical condition, and it's something that we all need to take very seriously. And part of why we're doing this is to really increase awareness and knowledge, and hopefully that you'll be able to take this information to your healthcare professionals as well and share some with them. That it's rare. More than 5 million people in this country, I don't think it's rare. And that's only the ones we know about. That's not all the people who have not yet been diagnosed. And that I said before that it only affects women. It doesn't. It can also affect men. And there's actually an online support group for fibromyalgia just for men. So you may wonder, this is where many of us are right now. Is the pain real? Is it really pain? Or am I just depressed? And we always hear that, well, maybe it's just because you're depressed. And that's really very hard for us to understand, because We think, we didn't do this to ourselves. It's not because we're depressed that we're hurting. How did I get it? Was there a beginning? Was there something I could put my finger on and say, aha, that's when it started? For some people it is, because sometimes it is a result of an injury, but a lot of times there's no definitive, I did it, this is exactly when I did it. Am I just imagining it? Will I ever get my life back? And that was the one thing that I kept asking myself, and I really thought it was over. In fact, I felt so bad at one point that I wanted my husband to take the kids and just leave. I didn't have the energy to do it, but I had so much guilt around not being able to fulfill and get my life back, fulfill all the duties that I wanted to do, that I thought, am I ever going to get my life back? And is it fatal? And I think sometimes, especially before you know what's going on, sometimes you think it might be a blessing. And unfortunately, that's part of how I felt. And I was in my, early 30s when all this took place. Look at what modern medicine can do today. They can give you a new heart, new lungs, new livers. They can do all these amazing things. So what do we expect? What is our expectation? That they can take away our pain, right? That's our expectation. They should be able to do that. But what happens with people with fibromyalgia, and I like to use the maze, we get stuck in there. We sort of get dropped in there when our pain starts, and we just keep going from one dead end to another. I mean, I did that for 6 years. And that's how it feels. That's exactly what happens. It's so confusing. And your pain, let me ask you this. How does a headache look? Can you see it, a backache? How does it look? Our pain is invisible. You can't measure it. You can't x-ray it. You can't take an MRI of it. There is no way for them to say, oh, you have a 5 level of pain today, or oh, this is a 10, that's pretty bad. There is no way to measure pain, and that's part of the problem. And I always kept telling myself, if I only knew what was causing my pain, then I would be able to live with it, right? So it took them 6 years to figure it out, to give me a diagnosis. And then I thought, well, if you know what it is, then you should be able to fix it. So it didn't help at all. Because then my expectations were, okay, now fix it. Because remember, we think modern medicine can perform miracles. But what's really interesting about pain, and it's not even the pain as much as it is the fear of the pain, never knowing the next time it's going to hit. Not knowing if you can make a plan tomorrow. I mean, I know coming here today, I bet there's some people who made reservations and just couldn't make it. And we understand that. Because you never know. And so you don't make plans from one day to the next. You're never sure. Or unfortunately, sometimes people will anticipate that their pain may get out of hand. So if they go out, they may take a little more medication than they need because they don't want to have to go home. The fear is the controlling factor of your pain. We look to our healthcare professionals to give us the answers. The problem is, in all of the medical education that they get, some of them 8, 10, 12, 20 years, they get 2 hours of pain management. That's it, 2 hours. So how are they supposed to help us? They don't know. And so when you go to your healthcare professional and you ask them, and they give you this look, sometimes it's because they just don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. And they have been trained to cure and to heal. And we keep coming back and saying, it's no better, or I am worse. And it's really frustrating for them. Unfortunately, they don't know how to say, I don't know. A lot of them just don't know how to. I was fortunate enough, finally someone said, I don't know, we need to send you here. And it was because a lot of people go through procedures that they may not need to have. Interdisciplinary pain management, we're going to talk about that later. We're going to really look at the first part, we're talking about fibromyalgia, but the second part is really how do you live with it? And interdisciplinary pain management is something that you really need to have if you're going to live with fibromyalgia or any other kind of chronic pain problem. But they're very expensive, and unfortunately, they're very hard to find these days. And so what happens to people with pain? What do they always hear? Learn to live with it. And when they do that, this is what happens. That's exactly how we feel. It's like, how am I supposed to do that? Many, many times they told me, learn to live with it. And I thought to myself, you know, if I could do that, I would have figured it out by now. I mean, I'm very inventive, sort of creative, and thought, you know, I really didn't want to be in this patient role. I would have figured it out. No one ever told me how, though. That was the problem. What we want more than anything else is validation. We want someone to believe our pain. We want them to believe that, yes, you do have pain. I understand. And I think that's what one of the things the American Chronic Pain Association does, is we validate your pain, because we don't ask you, are you sure? You know, are you sure maybe you're not feeling that? We don't put you on the defense. And that's what so many people with pain feel like all the time. They feel very defensive. You know, like they're always trying to defend their pain. We're there to have them help us. So we become very defensive, and all we want is someone to validate our pain, to say, yep, I believe you, because then we can start to get to work. The problem is that, I love this picture because that's how it happens. We just sort of let our pain take over who we are, and we go further and further, and the further down we go, you know, the less we see of ourselves. We walk into this big foggy cloud, and we just disappear after a while, and we are defined by our pain. And the one thing that really bothers me is when people call and they'll say, I'm a chronic pain patient. And I'm thinking, okay, we have to talk. Because you are a person with pain, but there is so much more to you than just your pain. And that's something that we continue. You'll see a lot of the things that we do, it all talks about going from patient to person. And that's really the key here. We don't want to get lost in our pain. We don't want it to take over who we are. We are a person with pain, but we have so much more than just our pain. And that's really where we have to begin to focus. So, how do you explain it to your healthcare provider, right? And remember all the things we just talked about, how confusing, you know, it may be aching, it may be, you know, a deep, intense pain, you may just hurt all over, you're tired. You know, how do you explain all that to your healthcare provider? Because what we want is for them to understand exactly how we feel. Now, how many people have said to me, you know, if my doctor could just feel my pain for just 5 seconds, then they'd know. But they're never going to do that. But the problem that I had was I kept thinking about what's the best way to describe my pain. How can I tell them this? And so I spent many, many hours thinking about it. You know, what is the best way so they'll really get it? But the problem was, instead of focusing on other things, all I did was focus on my pain and how it felt. And so what I did was I increased my sense of suffering, because all I did was think about my pain. The more we think about our pain, the more we're going to suffer. So that was one of my big problems. I kept wondering, how am I going to explain this? And you really, you're never going to be able to do it. If we could take our pain out of our body and hold it in our hand and say, here, see, now do you get it? But we can't do that. So one of the things, and this is on your table, we have created a new fibro log, and this is specifically for people with fibromyalgia. And it's designed to help you track all the different areas of pain. First of all, and we have to ask what your pain level is from a 0 to 10. They need to know, where are you at? But then the next line, we talk about where the pain is. You know, different areas of your body. Is there's no pain? Is it mild? Is it moderate? Or is it severe pain? All you have to do is check. It makes it really easy. And then what about your quality of life? Is it very good, or is it dwindling away? How about exercise activity? Are you very active, or do you stay in bed all day? I mean, it goes from one extreme to the other. How about your interference with sleep? How much does your pain interfere with your sleep? And then your range of motion, your morning stiffness. You know, how stiff are you when you get out of bed? Can you get up and move all over the place? Or are you at the other end of the scale where you can't move at all and don't want to get out of bed? And then exhaustion. How much energy do you lose during the day? How fatigued are you during the day? You know, and that's something that we all struggle with that have fibromyalgia, because it makes us very tired sometimes. The change in weather. I was just talking to someone before about the weather here in Pittsburgh. I used to live in Pittsburgh for most of my life, and so I understand the weather changes here. How does that affect you? Does it not affect you, or does it affect you in a great way? Your stress level, that's also a key. How about your mood? You know, that's another thing that we need to measure. And then how isolated you've become. And I know for myself that I would just pull away, and I didn't want to get involved. I didn't want to be with other people, because what do they tell you? They tell you, oh, you look so good. I don't understand why you're in so much pain. And one of the things that we always do is we give mixed messages. I want to ask you, when was the last time you guys went to your doctor in your pajamas? You don't, do you? No, we make the most effort to look as good as we can. And then we want them to figure out that we're really feeling bad. And I don't want you to go to doctors in your pajamas. But think about it. I mean, people look at us and they see what we want them to see. And so instead we start to pull away and become very isolated. So we really need to look at that. How about weight gain or loss is another thing? Your appetite, is it good or is it decreased? How about snacking during the day? And that's certainly going to have an effect on your pain. And inactivity is also very important. How about alcohol? Do you drink a lot? Do you drink a little? Ability to concentrate is also very important. The fear of the pain, we measure that, and then your exercise. And what this scale does, these are all graphical, all you have to do is circle. You don't have to write out long journals. You just circle this, you take it into your doctor, and in a matter of 2 minutes, he can look at all of this and see what's going on. Because think about it. You have what, maybe 5-10 minutes at the most at your doctor's office? You know how long it would take you to talk about all of this? And we want that validation. We want them to understand what we're going through, but we spend so much time. So by using this fibromyalgia log, you'll be able to take it to your doctor and say, and they ask them how you're doing, here it is. Very easy. Understand, this is how it's affected. Because every one of these things I just talked about has an impact on that very top level of how much pain you're in. It's all connected, and we'll talk about that later. So this is a really good graphical tool to help you better communicate with your healthcare provider. This is on our webpage. You can go on the webpage and download it as many times as you want, print it out, let your doctor know that they can use it. It's there for everyone to use. Another one, and this is one I always had a real problem with, when the doctor would ask me on a scale of 0 to 10, what's your pain, right? Now, I was in my late 20s when it started. You know, it was hard for me at the very end, before I went to a pain management program, and I'll be talking to you about that later, to even hold a cup of coffee. Couldn't take care of my children, couldn't take care of my house, couldn't be the wife I wanted to be. And so when they asked me on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the worst, what's my pain? I wanted to say 20. And right away they'd think, okay, in that case, there you are. Because I wanted them to understand how much this was impacting my life, how much control it had over my life. So, 0 to 10, what does a 5 mean? I could be standing up here in a 5 and you could be home in bed. Or I could be up here, you know, with an 8 or embedded in 8, and someone else could be out playing tennis. I mean, there's no real numbers. We don't know what those mean. It's different for everyone else. However, if we can measure the quality of life, your level of functioning, that really begins to communicate with your healthcare provider how your pain has impacted your life, your quality of life. What's it doing? Okay, so this is another scale. This has been used widely. We've been using this for a long time. It's on our webpage as well. You know, so if you're at a 0, you stay in bed all day. You can't function. All the way up to 10, where you go on with your normal everyday life. You know, it can be anything in between. Say you're at a 4, and you get up, maybe do a few things around the house, but that's about it. Then they get it. They get, this is how this pain is impacting my life. It's another good communication tool. So, preparing to go to your doctors, and this is something we really need to do, and we think a lot about it, but we really need to be prepared, again, because our visits are so short. We don't have that much time. So let's prepare. Let's write down only the new things that happened since the last time you saw them. It's not start at the beginning. I mean, they understand, they know, they have it in your chart. Just write down anything, any new symptoms that have occurred. include all the medications that you're taking, list them all. But when you do that, make sure that you also include any over-the-counters you're taking, vitamins and herbal supplements, because they all have an impact on those prescription medications. That is so important. Don't forget to do that. Things that you've tried. Is heat, did it help? Did it not? Ice. Just take one sheet of paper, bullet points, write these things down. Very short, very concise. Again, we want to make the most of our visits. We're there for answers. We're not there to discuss, all of these things in a very lengthy amount of time. We want to let them know what we're doing so that they can give us some resolve to those issues. Change in your daily function. Is it better? Is it worse since the last time they saw you? What about your mood, your sleep, your appetite? Has that changed at all? And again, the FibroLog is going to help you with a lot of these things. And then questions that you have, and that is so important. You really need to write those down because we never remember them. And I always think to myself, I have to remember to ask this. And then on the way home, I go, I forgot again. And I've given this talk, and I talk about writing it down so many times, and I must admit sometimes I forget to do that myself. And I'm really angry at myself because I wanted to know. And if you try to call back, you can't get them. So you really need to write it down, be prepared. And one of the most important things is to take someone with you, because we don't always hear what they say. Again, office visits are very emotionally charged. I mean, we're there with so many high expectations, hoping that this is the one, this is the time that they're going to give me the answer I'm looking for and take away my pain. And so unless we take someone with us, we may not hear what they're saying. So how do you manage pain? And the problem is when you don't manage it, I like to use this little picture. It's like, do you ever get caught in one of those big waves? You go to the shore and you just sort of tumble around. You don't know what's up. You don't know what's down. That's how it feels when you have a chronic pain problem, especially fibromyalgia. You're just not sure where you're going. It's total control of your life. And so if you think you have fibromyalgia, and we encourage you to take all of these materials that we've given you today and talk to your healthcare provider about it. It's really important. When you have pain, you feel hopeless and depressed, and your depression did not cause your pain. Think about it. If you had the flu for an entire year, would you be happy? No, you'd be depressed. That's just the way it is. Depression is part of a long-term chronic pain problem. You'd be angry. I was angry because I felt like it took my whole life away. Great deal of anger. I was confused because one time they'd say this, another time they'd say that, and I was just like on an up and down roller coaster. The other problem is, though, remember I said that pain is never consistent at the same level? And so I was confused by my own. Today, oh, maybe it's gone. Maybe it just disappeared. Of course, then I went out and did more than I should and realized, no, it's not gone yet. But we get very confused. People around us get confused. They see you doing something one day, and then you're in bed for the next 3 days. It's really hard. Guilty? I felt so guilty. Like I said, I wanted my husband to take the kids and leave. I couldn't handle the guilt of not being able to fulfill my role. It was really hard for me. By the way, he didn't. Because I'd always say that and people say, well, did he do it? No, he didn't. We're still together. And out of control. I felt totally out of control. I had no control of my life whatsoever. But what's really interesting about all of this, and a few years back, more than a few years back, we started getting calls from family members, because they were looking for some kind of help and understanding. So while I know what it's like to live with pain, I don't know what it's like to live with someone who has pain. So I had to actually interview family members, and I did it for 3 years. And over those 3 years, it was amazing the things I heard. And so after that, we do have a family manual now for people with pain, or for family members who live with a person with pain. But there was only one difference. In all the conversations I had, there was only one difference. I would have thought I was talking to a person with pain. And the one difference between a person with pain and a family member, the family member does not feel the pain. All this other stuff up there, they're right there. They experience the same thing. It has total control over their life. It takes over their identity. It really does. And I don't think that we think about that very often. But they really have to be part of all of this. The family members experience the same thing. They really have to be part of this. We have to involve them. We have to talk to them. We have the family manual, but we also, in some of the groups, they actually have family support groups where they can go and talk too, because it's very critical to have them as part of your support system. But we can't forget that they're struggling as well. Medication, and this is something we're all looking for. We think all I need is the right pill, right? You get an infection, they give you an antibiotic, you're good to go. Get a headache, take an aspirin, good to go. If we just found that right pill, then we'd be okay. That's our expectation. The problem is, what we don't realize is that medication is only one of the many, many tools that you need. It's not the whole thing. A pill is unfortunately not going to solve everything. It's a tool, and it's an important and valuable tool. And every medication has risks and benefits. And that's why it is critical that you talk to your healthcare provider and make sure that even if you have several of them, that they all know what medications you're taking. We have a little card on our webpage that talks about, it's a card that you can fill out with all your different medications and keep it in your wallet. I don't know if there's any laying out there, but it's very important to do that. Medications can reduce your pain. They may reduce some of your pain, but it may not take it totally away. It's not the silver bullet. But again, you have to talk to your healthcare provider. We have recently put a new piece on our webpage called The Consumer Guide to Pain Medication and Treatment. And it's in a video format, and we don't have it all populated. We don't have all the sections done yet. But it really talks to you about all of the different kinds of medications. And it's healthcare providers, consumers really addressing all of these issues. It's just right on our webpage. Click on it. You can see it. It's a very helpful tool. One of the tools that we have designed, again, and we like graphical tools because we think they're very easy for people to use, is on taking medication, because a lot of people will get a prescription, but they may not follow or take it as directed. And so that's a key to how well medication is going to work. If you don't take it as prescribed, it may not do you any good. So what we have here is a card. We call it the care card. And you either take it in the morning or at night, little circle, daytime, nighttime, or if it's specific hours of the day, all the pharmacist has to do is draw little hands on those clocks. Take it on a full stomach or an empty stomach, which one? Things to avoid, and possible side effects, and it's all right there. So that way you know what's going on. And we've actually added, this is also on our webpage, and we've added storage and disposal of these medications, because that's critical to the safety of not only you, but your whole family and people that come in, is to appropriately store medication and then to dispose of it. And different medications need to be disposed of in different ways. Again, there's these little cards out there. You can pick those up, and then again, they're on the webpage for your healthcare provider if you'd like to tell them to use it. So when we look at talking about fibromyalgia with your healthcare provider, I think the one thing, and I was thinking about this morning, and I thought, it's sort of like, and I wish I had a different picture here, it's sort of like a football team. And our healthcare providers are coach, right? They're going to throw us all the plays. But we are the quarterback. We are a critical part of that team. And then we have all the other players out there, our little tools, our coping skills, everything else that we need, whatever it is. But we have to be a critical part of the treatment team. This is not passive. That's another reason I don't like people calling themselves chronic pain patients or a patient, because a patient is a passive role. And especially with fibromyalgia, you cannot be passive. This is really something that you have to participate in. Again, but you need to know how, and that's what we're going to talk about. The goal of living with a chronic pain problem with fibromyalgia is to reduce your sense of suffering and improve the quality of your life. That's really what the goal is. There may always, in everything, and I tell you, I lived in Pittsburgh at the time, and I saw the best of the best, and I expected them to make it go away. You may see, the best of the best. Listen to everyone, and at the end of the day, there may still be a certain level of pain. But the key, and you see the word that you need to learn to live with it, not existing with it. And that's the big problem. I think too many of us exist with it. We give up. We just don't participate. There may be some pain, but you can live with it. And I like to use this example. I have no idea what that is on the back of the board. It's very confusing. It could be solved, maybe not, I don't know. And if someone asked me to solve that, sort of like, I would be here the rest of my life. I have no idea. I don't know what it is. And that's how it's like when they ask you to live with your pain. That's what it looks like. You don't know, have no clue. However, I might be able to take a couple classes, algebra, geometry, calculus, differential equations. And if I really worked hard, I bet I could solve that problem or say, oh, well, this is what it is, and this is what it means. And that's how pain is. We don't know. We have to be taught the skills. This is what it looks like. We're going to try to erase that board and give you a clean slate today. The coping skills that the American Chronic Pain Association teaches and the coping skills that many pain programs teach, and they're universal. They're universal. There's a number of them, but it depends on what you need as an individual. So what we're going to do today is to give you a toolbox full of different kinds of tools. Some you may use, some you may not. And just to know, we're only scratching the surface. We're only scratching the surface of all of that is involved in pain management. We're giving you the basic steps. What I'd like to do now is to have you listen to some of our members, some of the people in the American Chronic Pain Association, and what they have to say about how pain affected their life.
Your pain will be a factor in your life, but it will not be who you are. By taking stock of your strengths and limitations and reminding yourself of the things that are important to you, you'll begin to find ways to move forward in spite of your pain.
You will get better. For as impossible as you think this experience is, there's a way through it and beyond it. And I am living proof of that.
Put your faith in someone that you trust, a physician that you know is going to help you through this process, and give it a chance.
Educate yourself on whatever the particular pain is.
I can't think about past today. I live this thing one day at a time.
Don't give up. There is help out there. You're not the only person in the whole world.
Pain is inevitable, but misery is an option.
It's a journey that we do together. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey itself.
You didn't invite pain into your life, and you don't have to let it take over. You can reclaim the life that belongs to you.
I'm a different person now. The old Ruthie is gone. She's dead. I don't think she'll ever come back. But truthfully, I like the new Ruthie better than I did the old Ruthie.
And where I am now is I have more power than I ever had, even though I'm less physically capable than I used to be.
And I don't do all the things that I once did, but I still have that joy. Music is a great joy to me and fills my heart with a lot of happiness.
Helping my daughter plan her wedding and just doing all that fun stuff in showers and actually being at the reception and dancing. That was great. Boy, that was one of the best days of my life.
My life now is like I'm coming up out of a hole and coming into sunshine, and I feel real good about it.
Every few months, I take a deep breath and I get in the car and I drive to Cincinnati, Ohio, and then I drive to Louisville, Kentucky, or Frostburg, Maryland. I don't know how I do it, but there's grandchildren at the end of the road, and I can do it.
I've been living with pain for a total of 15 years. 4 years of night and 11 years of light.
So what I would like to talk with you about is our 10 steps from patient to person. And we don't really, it's not like a 10-step program that you have to go step 1, step 2, step 3. This is just sort of a beginning of a roadmap for you to really understand what are some of the main components in learning how to live with your pain. That being said, the first 2 steps you really need to do in order. You need to do step 1, and that is accepting the pain. And that is so hard for so many people to do because we think if we're going to accept this pain, we're just giving up and quitting. And it's not that at all. It means for today, I'm going to accept what I have. I'm going to make the most of today. Today, I'm accepting it. Who knows what tomorrow is going to bring? There's always, I mean, we believe anything is possible and there is hope for tomorrow. But you have to quit. I mean, so many people, they spend so much time looking and looking and looking, thinking there's an answer out there. And unfortunately, sometimes there's no answer. But you have to accept it for today. The next step is to actually get involved in the recovery process, to take an active role. And I talked to you about this before. We can no longer be a passive patient because this is your life. And it's involving every moment of your life. So you really need to be more active. You have to take a part, ask questions. Let your healthcare provider know up front that, you know what, I want to know, I want to be well informed. I need to be able to make good decisions, but you have to talk with me. And that's why we have all those communication tools to really help you have that good conversation in a very short amount of time. The next one is priorities. And this is something that I think so many people struggle with. Because as your pain takes over your life, your ability to function sort of decreases. And what happens is you put something off. And we're saying you're going to put it off, you're going to set it over here in a pile. And then you put something else off. And you put something else off because you're not feeling well. And before you know it, you've got a mountain standing next to you, and you look at it, and it is just completely and totally overwhelming. And there is no way that you're going to know even where to begin with this. It's just overwhelming. And that's what happens to so many of us, because we keep thinking, I'll wait for a good day, and that day never really comes. So what you need to do, the first thing is to understand, where's your starting point? You need to have a starting point. Where do you begin? But how do you get that mountain down? And so one of the things that we like to tell our group members to do is to get a number of those index cards, the little 3x5 cards, probably about 300, because you got a big mountain here, 300. And then keep about 10 or 15 of them with you all the time in a pen. And every time you think about something that's in that stack over there, write it down. One card, one thing. Okay? So each time you think of something, you write it down on that card. And it may take you a week, it may take you 2 weeks, it may take you 3 months till you think you have everything on that pile identified. Okay? And once you do, what I want you to do is take those cards and get a really big table. You probably have a lot of them, or on the floor. Lay them all out and just step back and look at how much you've been carrying around. I mean, every time you think, you know, it's over there, it's not bothering me, you're carrying that all around on your shoulders because it's still inside. You're thinking about them, all those things. And then ask yourself, of all those things laying out there, of everything that's on those cards, right at that moment, what is the most important thing for you? What's the most important thing? And it may not be something work, you know, it may not be some housekeeping, it may just be something else. And you pick that card up, and now you have your first priority. And then you take that, and then you pick up the other cards in some order. I'd say probably pick up the next 20 that you think are really important to you, that you think you need to do now. And they're all on individual cards because we have to shift our priorities, right? We have to be able to move them around. Nothing is set in stone. But it really gives you a good sense. And you may add cards, you can start throwing them away, but now you actually have identified it. You feel like you have some control. I personally love control. I need to have that control. And it really begins to take away some of that sense of being so overwhelmed, because that's exactly what pain does. Once you have your first priority, what do? You need to find a place to start. And a lot of times our priorities, you know, what we want to do are kind of big. They're big things. So we have to know how to narrow them down to where we can manage it. Think about this. Remember I said we have good days and bad days? And when you have a good day, what do? You do as much as you possibly can, right? The guilt of all not being able to do it, and you get out there and you really work hard. And what happens? The next day, you can't move. You can't move. And you tell yourself, I knew I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that because look what happens. Well, maybe you couldn't work 10 hours a day, but I bet you could have probably worked a half an hour. You see, we tend to set ourselves up for failure. That's part of what we do. We're overachievers. I'm not one of those, but there's a lot of people out there that are overachievers. And so we tend to think, okay, if I'm good today, I have to get all of this done. We have to narrow it down so that we don't set ourselves up for failure. Then it's within our limits to make happen. And sometimes it just needs to be fun. You know, we need to have some fun. And so hopefully always one of your goals is to have a little fun, whether it's going to the movies, out to dinner, coloring with your grandchild, I don't know, but those have to be part of your goals. But we have to narrow them down. I used to do support groups a long time ago, and I had one lady in our group, and she had diabetic neuropathy, so her fingers and her hands, her feet were always numb. And one of the joys in her life was cooking for her family, baking. And her goal that month was to make chocolate chip cookies by herself. Now, for anyone who doesn't have pain, they'd think that's silly. You can do that in an afternoon. It doesn't take you a month to make cookies, right? However, for her, that was a big deal because she did very, very little. And so every week she'd come into group and she'd tell us what she did, and you know, she had to freeze the dough. And by the end of the month, and it took her a whole month, she made the cookies by herself without any help. And she brought them in and shared them with the group. And what I found really interesting is the whole group felt like we did this. They all shared on it because they all helped her. We talked about it in group, how to really begin to do this. And so what we have to do is narrow those things down, not set ourselves up for failure. Say you've been shut in the house for a while, it's hard to get off of the recliner, and you want to walk to the park, but the park is 3 blocks away. Do you just get up and walk to the park? On a good day, probably. It's probably what you do and then realize you can never do that again. How about let's narrowing that down? And the first day, the first week, just get up and walk to the front door and then back. Second day, the second week, walk to the mailbox and then back. You can handle that, right? You're slowly building up your endurance. We become very, very deconditioned because of pain. And then the next day, maybe at the end of the block, and the next week, and then you add week after week, you add a little more and you build it up. Don't set yourself up for failure. Anything is possible, but you have to work within your limits. And I think that's where we have a hard time, is focusing on what we need to do. Knowing your basic rights. And sometimes people go, well, what's that have to do with pain? And this is my favorite one. And when I talk to people, new support group leaders, I always tell them, because we have a workbook, and all of these coping skills are actually in our workbook. We have a sample of them out there. If you want to look at any of the manuals that I've talked about, we have them laying out there for you after the event. But I always say, start on the basic rights. This is what really empowers people. I love the basic rights. The couple favorite ones. The one is the right to make mistakes. No one ever told me I could make mistakes and it was okay. As long as you learn from them, it's okay to make mistakes. You have the right to do less than humanly possible. It means you don't have to kill yourself. See how this is working in? You don't have to get up on a good day and do everything. You have the right to do less than humanly possible. On a good day, enjoy it. Actually enjoy it. And guess what? You may have a better day the next day too, which is amazing. You have the right to be treated, and here they all are. They're on our webpage. You can download them, and I tell people to print these out and stick them on their refrigerator because they're all very critical to us. We have the right to ask why. We have the right to ask for help. We don't have to do everything ourselves. It's not a sign of weakness. And I always get reminded of that when I watch my grandchildren and they're trying to do something, and if it's too much, they don't even hesitate to say, help, I need help. But do we do that? No. Now, we're going to do this ourselves. We're going to prove that we can do this, right? We have the right to ask for help. It's not weakness. It's just you have the right to ask for help. You have the right to say no and not feel guilty. It's okay. Other people say no. Do you hold it against them? No. You let them do it. It's okay. But somehow we beat ourselves up on that one. You have the right to change your mind. And this is really an important one because maybe, in the emotion of the whole appointment with your healthcare professional, you said, okay, I'll try that. And you go home and you read what they gave you and you go, I'm not so sure. Call them up and say, you know what, I've changed my mind or I need more information. But you have that right. Just because you said yes once doesn't make it that you have to continue saying yes. You don't have to justify your behavior. And this is really important because what we don't want are people to always use their pain as their excuse. that this is why they don't want to do something. You can just simply say no and not feel guilty, and you don't have to justify your behavior. You don't have to explain it. Just say, I don't think so. No, or, you know, instead, and I did this. I mean, after a while, it was like, you know, I'm not going to feel good, or I don't feel good, I can't go. We don't have to justify our behavior. So the next time that your spouse or your friend asks you to go visit their mother for dinner, you can say no. You don't feel guilty about it. You don't have to justify your behavior. And it doesn't matter if you don't really like her, or if you just don't want to go, or you don't feel good. None of that matters. We haven't put ourselves into that patient role. And that's what we do when we keep justifying our behavior. We throw ourselves back into that patient role. And that becomes our identity, and we don't want to get lost in the fog. These are critical points. Recognizing emotions. And this is a really hard one, and this is where the whole mind-body thing comes in. And it's been actually 30 years, because I just went up to the Cleveland Clinic. That's where I went to a pain program 30 years ago. And they just celebrated their 30th anniversary. And I remember, you know, we searched, and someone, a doctor here in Pittsburgh, said, go there, see if they can help you. They'd pretty much given up on me. And there's somebody said, you know, this new doctor, he said he can help people live with pain. And I thought, yeah, right. You know, there's no one that can help me live with this. If I could have, I would have already figured it out. And it was the first time in 6 years that someone said, I can help. And I thought, and my husband was so excited, he thought, finally, yes, okay. And I thought to myself, no, you can't. And my husband wouldn't let me quit. He kept telling me that I'm stronger than that, I can keep going, keep going. And so I agreed to go to the pain program to fail. Didn't tell them that, but I thought, I'll show you, there's no hope for me. And I still came out, but I was there for 7 weeks, so I held the record on that.
One of the first things they did when I got there was gave me a book. The book was about anger. And I thought to myself, why are they giving me this book? Because I'm not an angry person. But by the time I was done reading the book, I saw myself as the angriest person in the world.
But the thing I took away from the book more than anything else, he talked about a slush fund. So I imagined it as a bucket. And every time we don't deal with a negative emotion, put it in your slush fund or a bucket, another drop of water in your bucket, right? And so time goes on, another drop, another drop, another drop. What happens? At some point, there's going to be one too many drops, and what's going to happen? The bucket is going to overflow. And that's what happens when we continually hold in those negative feelings like that. The wrong person, wrong time, just said one tiny little thing, and you took their head off, and they're wondering, where did this come from? And they don't realize you just dumped your whole bucket right on them. They have no idea where it came from. And imagine carrying a bucket of water around with you all the time. That's exhausting. It takes a lot of energy to keep all that in. It really does. It's sort of like all that your mountain there, you know, it's not really there, but it's all in here. So are all those negative feelings, and you keep carrying them around because we want to be nice people, right? We don't want to make a fuss. And so we don't do that. We don't express our negative feelings. And if you did them as they occurred, they would be tiny little things instead of that huge, massive explosion. So it's really important, and you have to understand, there's no wrong feelings. No wrong feelings, only inappropriate actions. Remember that. Now, I like to use this picture, and this is a little story I have. And this man here is the one who has the pain. You see his wife back there? Now, he's sort of repressing one of those feelings. He's holding it all in. And she's sitting back there, and she's not a very happy camper. She's wondering, what in the heck's going on? Is he hurting? You know, did I say something? They're both unhappy. It impacts them both. It's not just about him. It's about them. We do. People read us. I mean, that's part of who we are in our family and interacting. They pick up on that. If he had just explained to her, you know, maybe she gave him the wrong vegetable for dinner, whatever, who knows. But we can't hold in our feelings. We have to be able to express them. Because holding them in is only going to increase your stress, and that's going to make you feel even worse because it takes a lot of energy to do that. And it increases your stress, and tight muscles are going to hurt more. And it's a wonderful lead into the next coping skill, which is relaxation. right? And then I tell you to relax, right? Just relax. How do you do that? How do you just relax? I mean, if we could go to this wonderful island, lay on that nice warm sand, you can hear the waves almost breaking away. You know, you pick up that sand and it's like that warm silk going through your fingers. And the birds are sort of, you know, overhead and the palm trees are rustling. If we could just go there when we're stressed, that'd be okay. But reality is we're here and we can't do that. So how do you relax? What I want you to do right now for me, in your mind, I want each of you to count from 1 to 25, and at exactly the same instant, say your alphabet. Can't do it, can you? You know why? You have a one-track mind. You have a one-track mind. So, while you're thinking about being on this gorgeous island, listening to those waves break against the shore, feeling that warm, soft sand beneath you, for those few seconds, you're not thinking about, oh my God, my back is killing me. So in that instant, what you have done is reduced your sense of suffering, one of our goals, right? So you've reduced your sense of suffering. You've probably also relaxed your muscles a little bit and maybe decreased your pain, but at least you've reduced your sense of suffering. And this is a learned skill, to try to tell your body how you want it to feel. And we have to pay attention to what our body's telling us. And it goes back to that overachiever and being realistic about setting our goals. And when your body's going, ouch, stop. Give yourself 5 minutes. Don't say, oh, but I only have 10 more things to do. And then by the time you're done, it's screaming at you. Listen to what your body's telling you. Because if you took 5 minutes out, you may actually feel okay and can finish the next 10. Or maybe finish 5 more and take another 5 minutes and finish 5 more. It's called pacing, something that took me a long time to learn, and I'm still actually learning it. So you have to do it, but it's a learned skill, learning how to relax. And when I was in the program, when I was in the pain unit, I took these biofeedback sessions. I don't know how many of you have ever had biofeedback, but I had biofeedback, and so they had me hooked up to the, the monitor for your forehead and your fingers to measure the temperature of your fingers and the stress on your forehead. And the whole idea was, as they read this wonderful relaxation, you were supposed to be able to turn the sound down. But I tried a little too hard, and then always the sound went back up. Never worked. But the one thing that the gentleman did for me when I was taking biofeedback is he recorded those sessions. And he said, when you go home, listen to them, practice them. And I did. And I practiced them twice a day. And it was amazing because at some point in time, I found myself during the day listening to my body going, and I would just start, and I like breath relaxation the best, and I would start doing that. It was amazing. I told my body how I wanted it to feel, but it took a lot of practice. It's like you just can't jump on a two-wheeler and start driving down the street. You have to learn, and you're going to fall a little bit. It takes a lot of practice, but it's something that's really worth it. It's one of the most important coping skills for pain, is listening to your body and then telling it how you want it to feel. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a 5-minute relaxation for you. This is something that's also on our webpage. You can go on anytime on the home page, click on the 5-minute relaxation and listen to this. So I'm going to play this. If you want to kick off your shoes, relax. It's going to take 5 minutes and just listen to it. Close your eyes gently. Settle down comfortably. Begin by breathing out first. Then breathe in easily, just as much as you need. Now, breathe out slowly with a slight sigh. And as you breathe out, feel the tension begin to drain away. Then go back to your ordinary breathing. Even, quiet, and steady. Now, direct your thoughts to each part of your body. to your muscles and joints. Think first about your left foot. Your toes are relaxed and still. Your foot is resting easily on the floor. Now your right foot, toes, ankles. Now, think about your legs. Your thighs roll outward when they are relaxed, so let them go. Your back muscles are relaxed when you hold yourself upright and your spine is supported by the back of the chair. Let your abdominal muscles become soft and relaxed. There is no need to hold your tummy in tightly. It rises and falls as you breathe quietly. Think about the fingers on your left hand. They are curved, limp, quiet, and still. Now the fingers on your right hand. Relaxed, soft, and still. This feeling of relaxation spreads up your arms to your shoulders. Let your shoulders relax. Let them drop easily. Your neck muscles are relaxed if your head is held upright, resting easily balanced on the top of your spine. Let your face relax. Let the expression come off it. Make sure that your teeth are not held tightly together, and let your jaw rest in its relaxed position. Your cheeks are soft because there is no need to keep up an expression. Your lips are soft and hardly touching. Relax your forehead so it feels a little wider and a little higher than before. Now, instead of thinking of yourself in parts, become aware of the all-over sensation of letting go, of quiet and rest. When your muscles are relaxed, you begin to feel peaceful, rested, and quiet. Stay like this, listening to your breathing for a moment. Now, wiggle your hands and legs a little, and open your eyes and sit quietly for a moment. That gives you just a little sense of what it's like to go into a relaxation. It's really helpful, but again, you have to practice it. one of the things that you might want to do when you're just out, and doing anything or even sitting at home, ask yourself, are your hands, do you have them clenched tight in the fist? I mean, be aware of your body. Are you clenching your teeth? Are you relaxed? Are your lips all sort of tight? How about your forehead? All of those things are really good keys to give you indication that maybe you're starting to get a little bit tense. And you can just begin these relaxation exercises and really begin to help yourself. And it'll help you reduce sometimes the pain. It's a very important tool. Exercise is another one. And one of the problems that I had over the 6 years was every time I did something and it made the pain worse, the doctor would say, then don't do it. After 6 years, I wasn't doing anything. And like I said, it was hard to even hold a cup of coffee because I had become so deconditioned. So, again, we talk about pacing, and you think, okay, I'm going to start an exercise program, and exercise is very good for fibromyalgia. The problem is that sometimes we jump into it really fast. In our workbook, we have 18 mild stretching exercises, and they're illustrated to help people. And we did that so they could take it to their healthcare provider and say, which of these are good for me? Because we have no idea what you can and can't do. That's something you have to talk with your healthcare provider about. And a lot of times people say, we can do whatever. And we'll get people who go home and they'll try to do all 18 of them and do 10 repetitions of each. And they'll come back and say, there's no way I can do this. It's just too much. Because they set themselves up for failure. They jumped in with both feet instead of maybe narrowing it down to a manageable level. And so what we suggest, say one of the exercises that they said you could do was a leg lift, okay? Before you get out of bed in the morning, you get up and you don't get up. You get up, you just lift your leg as high as you can without feeling any pain. And put it down. You've exercised for the day. Next morning, same thing. It's not going to hurt. You're not going to get discouraged. Pretty easy to do. Next week, you add another leg lift. And over a period of time, you build up and continually add them. In the meantime, you're toning those muscles. You haven't set yourself up for failure, and you're actually strengthening muscles, putting the tone back in them, restoring the circulation. But we have to pace ourselves. We have to do it a little bit at a time. We can't just jump in with both feet. And it's interesting because I use this picture in all the talks and I go all over the country. But because I'm from Pittsburgh originally, I always talk about Pittsburgh on this picture. Because January 1st, there's a bunch of very crazy people that stand on the river's edge, and you know how cold it is here in January, and they jump in because it's the thing to do. They call themselves the Polar Bear Club. That's crazy. And it's like doing exercises. If you're going to go out and do them all at once when you haven't done any, you're going to get a real shock. So don't be a polar bear when you start an exercise program. Work within your limits. Very important. Okay? Exercise is really critical. Motion is important in pain management. And when we sort of step back, we have to look at the whole picture. Now, it's about you. It's about all of you. And the problem with so many of us is that we always focus on what we can no longer do, on our disabilities. Well, I can't do this anymore, can't do that. How about thinking about what you still can do? And maybe discovering things that you never knew you could do. Opening up new doors. Instead of, again, it's like, is the glass half full or is it half empty? What are your abilities? We all have disabilities, but we all have abilities, and that's really where we need to focus. Because in the end, pain management, I would say 80, at least 80, maybe even 90% of it is our attitude. And remember I told you I went to the clinic to fail? However, I did everything they told me to do. And I realized deep, deep, very deep down inside, there was a tiny spark, just one little speck of hope. And that's all I needed to keep me going. And every one of you sitting here today has that same little speck of hope, or you would not be sitting here today. I just wanted to let you know that. You're all very helpful, and you all are willing to make that journey from patient to person. Now what I want you to listen to is some of the people talking about going to one of our support groups and what it did for them. A significant part of being involved in your recovery is being involved with your peers.
Once I joined the ACPA and the support groups, the knowledge just flowed.
Somebody's always bringing something in to, you know, say, oh, I found this book, I read this book, and, you know, we pass it around.
Everybody who has pain can give something to somebody else. It could be just, oh, I took that and it had side effects, so keep an eye out. Or, oh, I tried doing this and that and it worked out real well.
When I first started going through the program, I just fought it. I just said, you know, no way. You know, it's not going to help. It's not going to work. And then after a couple weeks, I started seeing the benefits of it.
It's lonely when you have chronic pain.
The first time I walked into a room with people who had chronic pain, what a validation that was for me. It was like, Marianne, you're not the only person in the world that lives with this.
No matter how supportive your husband is or anything, and
Tell you the truth, I never would have survived all this without my pain group.
It's just this kind of reinforcement that you're not alone, that there are other people out there going through the same thing.
It's been my lifeline at the ACPA members and having the support group.
You need them.
So the last step that we look at is the outreach, and I think that's where I started, when I started the organization back in 1980, because when I left the pain program, a couple of things occurred to me. First of all, I realized I wasn't the only person in the world who had a chronic pain problem. There were other people. They were in the unit with me. And what I had learned was just too good to keep to myself, because if it actually helped me, maybe it could help someone else. But I think the main thing was I was scared to death because I had tried so many things before. And they worked for a little bit, and then they stopped. And I thought, all right, is this another fluke? Is it going to last? You know, is it going to continue? Am I going to still be that person I've worked for 7 weeks to become? And so I knew I needed some kind of positive reinforcement to maintain my wellness, and that's really where the biggest part is. And so that's how the American Chronic Pain Association was born, and it was right here in Pittsburgh. This is how I like to explain a person with pain. We actually have our little cars now. This is a car, except a person with pain, a person with fibromyalgia, their car has 4 flat tires, and there's no way they're going to go anywhere. And we always think it's that one thing, if we can just find the right thing, we'll be able to go. We'll be able to continue our lives. The problem is that one thing only puts air in one of your tires. You still have 3 flat tires. Where are you going? So you have to ask yourself, what else is it that you need? So many people I talk to, they'll try something, it doesn't work, so they stop, let the air out of their tire, and they keep filling up the same tire, back and forth, but they never look at the other 3. And it depends on, and, you know, like we talked about medication before, it may reduce some of your pain. So let's keep the air in that tire. Maybe you start an exercise program, maybe it's helping a little bit. So you put air in another tire, but you have to do them all together. That's why we talk about so many different areas of pain management. You really have to put air in all 4 of your tires. You know, it could be a biofeedback session, it could be acupuncture, it could be taking a vacation. I don't know what you need. Everyone's tires are different. And once you get those 4 tires filled, you need to maintain your car. It's your responsibility to maintain your wellness. You know, if something goes wrong with your car, you take it into the mechanic. You know, if it needs gas, you're going to fill it up. But if something's wrong, you're going to take it to the mechanic. And so you have to go for the usual checkups, you have to go for the, you know, and if something goes wrong, you're going to talk to your healthcare professional. But on a day-to-day basis, it's your job to make sure your car is running. And you have to keep checking the air in those tires. It's just a good way to think about pain management. It's not just one thing, and so many of us look for that. We have support group here in Pittsburgh. We have a couple in the outlying areas. We have them all over the world, actually. We have groups, we have workbooks to help people start support groups if they're interested in it. If you've come a distance, you can call our office. It really helps to talk to other people. You heard Marianne in the one video, you know, what a validation that was, to know that she wasn't the only person. And I heard someone when they walked in here today, it says, wow, it's not just me. There's other people. And fibromyalgia is so confusing. We really do need some positive reinforcement. We need to know that we're not alone, and that is so critical. Here are some good references. The Fibro Center, and I know that this video, they're videoing this, it'll be on the Fibro Center and it'll all be on our webpage as well. And some other resources for you. If you have any questions at all you have to do is call our office. There's our number, it's on the handouts we have. We are in California, that's where I live now. So, but you have to call during regular business hours in California.